Think for a moment about Spottedleaf. There are a few things that probably come to mind immediately. The fact that she's currently a vaguely unpopular character, even though she's from the first arc, her crush on Firestar, the authors implying she was direct competition for Firestar's lifelong wife, or Spottedleaf's heart. We don't need to talk about Spottedleaf's heart today, and I don't want to, because it's pretty much entirely irrelevant. But who is Spottedleaf in the first arc of Warrior Cats? That answer is easy. She's dead. It makes Firestar sad that she's dead, and then she's largely the deliverer of vague dream messages to Fireheart, who seemingly got a strong connection with StarClan. If this happened 4 arcs later, he'd be whisked off to the medicine den immediately against his will, like his grandsons Jayfeather and Alderheart did. Is a StarClan connection genetic? Maybe. Unrelated, though. Here's my point. In the first 6 books in the original series, Spottedleaf doesn't like Fireheart. I mean, she likes him, but she's not in love with him. There's nothing indicating that at all. We have a narrative built up that Spottedleaf was in love with him the second that he joined ThunderClan, but there's nothing supporting that in Arc 1. Spottedleaf's interactions, while she's alive with Firepaw, are really minimal. She's described as being young and pretty for a medicine cat by Graystripe, who is basically telling Firepaw, that's our medicine cat Spottedleaf, she's hot, as our first outside bit of information about her period. Specifically younger and prettier than Darkstripe, who, if retcon's timelines are to be believed, she's not only older than Darkstripe, but Darkstripe is also Graystripe's brother, and he should at least be aware of that. But we're not talking about retcons now, we're talking about the canon of Into the Wild, and in the canon of Into the Wild and the canon of the first series, Spottedleaf is young. We don't have any reason to believe this is wrong or a misconception. Changes to this information are retcons added by later editions. Then, the first time we actually see Spottedleaf, she is again called pretty. By the narrative, but it's also by Firepaw. Firepaw gives her shy glances, thinks that it's no trouble to see Spottedleaf, and seems to want to talk to her. She doesn't have a single indication that these feelings are returned, or that she really even notices. She's shown to be friendly, almost flirty with Tigerclaw, but she really doesn't have any interest in Firepaw at all. Quite the contrary, while she tolerates Tigerclaw's seemingly light-hearted teasing, she's shown to not have any patience at all for Firepaw and Graypaw. Her future interactions, while alive, with Firepaw are mostly just business, giving him herbs for Yellowfang, giving him mouse bile for ticks, giving him traveling herbs. She does slowly become more friendly with him. Right after she prepares the traveling herb wraps, she touches her nose to his cheek and he purrs and smells her. She tells him good luck and to travel safely. Then when Lionheart dies, she leans on him for comfort while Graypaw grooms his corpse. After this scene, the next time we see Spottedleaf, she's anxious and troubled spiritually. She's a bit avoidant of sharing what's troubling her, but seemingly impulsively decides to tell Firepaw about the prophecy that involves him as she feels it's the right time. This is the last conversation they have before Spottedleaf is killed. While Firepaw's interest in Spottedleaf is explicit, Spottedleaf is never anything more than eventually friendly with Firepaw, and none of their interactions are significantly different than his interactions with his other friendly clanmates. She presses her nose to his cheek, which maybe was meaningful to him, judging by how the book describes her smell, but doesn't seem indicating of anything from her perspective, especially with no communication whatsoever to imply anything more than wishing him good luck. On top of this, the cats are constantly greeting each other by touching noses, as well as, in the first arc, sharing tongues, allo-grooming, or whatever you'd like to call it, is common between clanmates. We see Firepaw and Graypaw cleaning each other, Whitestorm and Tigerstar. We see a random Ginger Queen, which we can label probably Goldenflower, approach Ravenpaw to lick his cheek when he's hurt and distressed. Graypaw licking Firestar's ear out of sheer friendliness, Firepaw licking Ravenpaw's chest to say goodbye, and all of that's just in the first book. It's a common social behavior that indicates nothing but the two cats getting along. Firepaw calls her my sweet Spottedleaf after she dies and smells her one last time or whatever, but again, this is Firepaw, Firepaw's opinion, Firepaw's crush. There's nothing in Spottedleaf's behavior that returns this. From here on for a while, half the time Spottedleaf is mentioned, it's just for her voice to say, "Fire alone will save our clan," in Fireheart's memories. He thinks about how much he misses her, who, from what we understand, he loved for being pretty and smelling good. He has some sort of spiritual experience while fighting Clawface, her murderer, but while he cries for her to help him as a ghost, it's Graystripe who saves him in that battle. At the end of Chapter 28 of Fire and Ice, Spottedleaf visits him in a dream, touching her nose to his, then, in a Christmas Carol sort of way, gives him an ominous message from StarClan. He thinks about how she smells again. She vanishes. After this, he has a collection of 2 constantly repeated prophecy phrases that enter his mind every time she does. Spottedleaf visits him again in Forest of Secrets and again touches noses to him to greet him. Just so you know, Princess, Fireheart's sister, also greets him this way whenever she meets him. Spottedleaf leads him to a vision and tells him water can quench fire for his prophecy catchphrase basket. She also visits him to show him a vision of Blue Star's kits. She shows up at the end to look at him kindly and vanishes. This is a vision of the past, which wasn't something I thought StarClan could do, but Spottedleaf does whatever she wants, I guess. Fireheart dreams a lot about Spottedleaf, but every Spottedleaf dream is the same. She shows up, she touches his nose, she tells him an omen, she vanishes instantly, and he thinks about how good she smells, rinse and repeat. In Rising Storm, Fireheart has a vision of Spottedleaf ignoring him. After this vision, the narrative wonders. Fireheart shook his head to clear his mind. The dream had frightened him. Spottedleaf had always been closer to him in dreams than she had been even in real life. Her behavior last night stung like the bite of an adder. Was the gentle medicine cat abandoning him? This quote is relevant because it's the first arc saying that she was not close to him as an apprentice. The next time he sees her, it's just another prophecy message dream. He goes on about this message with Cinderpelt, who tells him to stop focusing on Spottedleaf so much when Sandstorm is right there. This is the first point where Fireheart even considers that Sandstorm might like him. It's made very explicit in this book that Fireheart thinks of the reoccurring cat ghost romantically. He thinks of her in reference to Greystripe's relationship with Silverstream, and the narrative tells us that Spottedleaf would always remain in his heart as he grows closer to Sandstorm. When Yellowfang dies in Rising Storm, Spottedleaf floats down to tell him that she'll be safe with them and vanishes again, and that's the last we see of her in that book. In the next book, he tries to call to her in his dreams, but she doesn't show up. He just tries again later and it works fine. She's only there to give him another warning though. This time dead Yellowfang is there too. And then, later, another warning vision. It's not even relevant, it's just, the same thing she does every time. The next time he actually sees her is in StarClan when he gets his 9 lives. He's very excited about that. Spottedleaf comes to him and gives him a life for love, and the narrative says, "This cat, more than any, was the one with whom he wanted to speak, because the time they had together had been too short to let them share their true feelings." But then continues on, "With this life, I give you love," she murmured in her soft voice. "Use it well, for all the cats in your care, and especially for Sandstorm." He thought he caught a proud gleam in her eyes as she turned away, and his disappointment that she had not stayed to talk with him was mixed with relief that she approved of his new choice. Now he had no reason to fear that he was being unfaithful to Spottedleaf in his love for Sandstorm. But Firestar and Spottedleaf never had a relationship. This musing, the narrative, is talking about Firestar's thoughts, his worries and his insecurities. There hasn't been a single reasonable hint or a conversation between these cats implying a mutual attraction. Spottedleaf is kind to Fireheart, but that's it. Her mannerisms when interacting with him are no different than those of his close friends, Greystripe, Ravenpaw, Princess, or Cinderpelt, aside from the way he reacts. And yeah, I'm aware that Cinderpelt also has a crush on Fireheart. That is canon to the first series. At the very end of the last book, after at least one more Omen visit, Spottedleaf tells him that he's not alone and that she'll watch over him forever. That's it. That's the extent of Spottedleaf's spoken feelings for Fireheart. In the first arc, she never admits her undying love, acts in ways Fireheart's own sister or best friend don't, and I'll admit to some extent that the female characters in Warrior Cats are a bit more touchy with Fireheart than the male characters are, but that's all the female characters. And while Cinderpelt and Sandstorm are both canonically romantically interested in Fireheart, other characters like Princess and Ravenpaw, who aren't romantically interested in Fireheart, act the same way when they greet him. You could argue that the authors want you to read the relationship as mutual because of the narrative describing it that way, but nothing about their relationship, aside from Fireheart's feelings for her and, quote, breathing in her sweet scent every time, implies anything more. Darkest Hour comes out in late 2004, ending the first series of Warrior Cats, all of which were published quickly in about 2 years of time as opposed to the modern 3 years. Spottedleaf doesn't show up in a book again until Moonrise the next year, but here she says, "I loved him as well as any cat," Spottedleaf purred. "Maybe even more than I should have done as a medicine cat. If StarClan had not chosen me to walk their path, things might have been different." Her eyes narrowed with affection. "I never had kits of my own, Leafpaw, but I cannot say how happy it makes me that Firestar's daughter will be following the path of a medicine cat. I know that StarClan has great things in store for you." The term, as well as any, is ambiguous, but Spottedleaf is clearly stating that she loved him. But really? Huh? Because there's nothing in this series where this is actually relevant that really implies that. Not any more so than the idea that someone like Ravenpaw is in love with Fireheart. The situation is the first she ever implies she actually has feelings for him, alongside the first time that she's a character with any real agency, and not just Darkland's messenger since Book 1. Actually, maybe too much agency, as this whole paragraph is only prompted by Leafpaw saying, "He told me how much you helped him." And this is the beginning of a diverging Spottedleaf. If Spottedleaf was in love with Fireheart in the first series, she never told anyone, never acted on it, and never made it explicit. Up until this point, she hadn't expressed any interest in him. Suddenly, though, her being in love with him is coming from every angle: the books, the author chats, the website bonus content. In 2005, the first ever Wands and Worlds author chat is held, and somebody asks, okay, while I was actually getting the visuals together for this video, I learned that the Warrior Cats wiki transcript of this interview, the Wands and Worlds interview, is actually heavily paraphrased. Sorry, this is a huge distraction, but I realized, I'm doing the visuals right now, and I went in, and the question that is transcribed to the Warrior Cats wiki, and the question that is actually on Wands and Worlds from the author chat, have two completely different implications. So now I have to actually edit my audio, which I hate doing. But anyway, here we go. So Magic Yop asks, throughout the first series, Fireblank's love for Spottedleaf is discussed. However, when Spottedleaf was alive, I never actually saw any evidence of that. Note they say, while Spottedleaf was alive. The transcription on the Warrior Cats wiki changes it into the wild, which isn't the case. And Cherith, under the handle Aaron Hunter, says, he didn't have that much time with her, and he was an apprentice new to the clan, while she was the medicine cat. If she had lived, I'm sure there would have been more, but remember that medicine cats can't have a mate. Also, in the original question, Cherith says, if she had lived, I'm sure there would have been more. And they changed it in the wiki to say, there probably wouldn't have been more of a relationship. And that's two totally different statements. The question is relating to showing Firepaw's feelings for Spottedleaf. The answer is, if she had lived, there would have been more of his feelings shown. And the wiki changes that to a sentence that says, there probably wouldn't have been more of a relationship, which wasn't the question. They don't talk about Spottedleaf having any love for him here. But then Author Chat 3 happens in May 2007, right around the time that the site is releasing. They use questions about Spottedleaf to tease the upcoming Firestars Quest Super Edition, the first ever. Someone asks if Leafpool was a reference to Spottedleaf. Cherith says yes. Somebody else asks who the author's favorite ships are at the time. Vicky mentions at the end of her answer liking Firestar and Sandstorm, thanks to Spottedleaf never leaving them alone. This is odd, because Spottedleaf up until this point never got in the way of Firestar and Sandstorm. In fact, she encouraged it openly. Then, in 2007, we get the first Super Edition, Firestar's Quest. Yes, Firestar's Quest is a third arc book, and it's actually pretty obviously written with newer sensibilities. All of the first arc weirdness is gone, and it paints us a picture of old ThunderClan, but with, at the time, modern book writing and modern book pitfalls. It's almost strange. We get this uncanny valley Firestar's ThunderClan again later in Greystripe's Vow, but I'm getting distracted. In Chapter 6, Spottedleaf appears to Firestar, almost identically to how she would in Arc 1, but instead of murmuring an omen and fading away, she has a full conversation with him. This would have never happened in the first arc. Sandstorm believes, probably rightfully, that she's always been Firestar's second choice after Spottedleaf. They fight about that a few times during the book. This is probably exactly what Vicky was talking about when she referenced Spottedleaf getting in the way. Spottedleaf is in the way, in that the concept of Spottedleaf is in the way. Spottedleaf did nothing wrong. Spottedleaf doesn't show up again until Chapter 29, but as a completely visible manifestation. She carries herbs, chews them up, uses them on a wounded cat. It's nonsense. Firestar accidentally implies that Spottedleaf visits him in his dreams all the time, and Sandstorm is like, you never told me this. Spottedleaf comes between them. That's not true. Firestar and I never discovered what we might have meant to each other, she meowed at last.
I was alive in the forest for such a short time after he came to ThunderClan, but I know for sure," her voice grew more intense, "that he and I could never have been mates. I was and always will be a medicine cat. That comes first, more than any cat who walks the forest, more than even Firestar."
Sandstorm searched the tortoiseshell cat's face. "Is that really true?"
"Of course," Spottedleaf purred. "Even now I'm a medicine cat, not for my clanmates in StarClan, but for all the cats in the forest below."
Both in her discussion with Leafpaw, which chronologically takes place long after this, and here, she insists that her life as a medicine cat prevented her from ever being mates with Firestar. After this, Sandstorm says, "Thank you, Spottedleaf. I've never stopped thinking about how you and Firestar seemed to belong together when he first came to the forest, but I understand better now." Which, Sandstorm, they had like one non-work related conversation ever, please. At the end of the book, 3 months after getting home from his journey that took a question mark amount of moons to begin with, Sandstorm and Firestar have kits. As Firestar entered, Sandstorm drowsily raised her head. "I thought of some names," she murmured. "How do you like Squirrel Kit and Leaf Kit?"
"I think they're wonderful names,"
Firestar replied. The dark ginger Squirrel Kit for her fluffy tail, of course, and the tabby Leaf Kit in memory of Leafstar, and perhaps of Spottedleaf too. Leaf Kit, named after the leader of SkyClan, Leafstar, and maybe Spottedleaf, thinks Firestar, but Sandstorm doesn't actually give her reasoning, so we don't really have any idea. But even with these additional retcons and author information, it only really makes it seem like, if anything, Spottedleaf fell in love with Fireheart sometime after her death, or only thinks they could have developed a relationship someday if only they had been warriors. Well, but the retcons don't stop there. In 2008 or 2009, there was a Warrior Cats reading challenge. They set up an entire website for it. One of the prizes for this challenge was an original document called Spottedleaf's Honest Answer, written by Victoria Holmes. I've got the PDF from the now not functioning website Silverpelt that used to be hosted there. This document, which is about 3 pages long, is now no longer officially hosted on any Warrior Cats website. Pretty much the only accessible way left to read it online, now that Silverpelt is mysteriously gone, if you never downloaded it like I did, is through a copy-pasted version on the Warrior Cats wiki. The story is written as if Spottedleaf is talking directly to the reader, rudely and condescendingly, and the reader is being nosy and asking her how she feels about Fireheart and Sandstorm. She goes on to talk about how she pines for and longs for Firestar and will forever, and offhandedly mentions that she and Tigerstar are descended from SkyClan cats, and insists it wasn't love at first sight. She says she began to see Firepaw differently once she saw Firepaw caring for Yellowfang, and implies that she eventually fell in love with him. She complains a moment that she was closer to him in death than in life, details a scene in which he came to her in a dream and said he couldn't be in love with a memory, which I think only happens within this document, especially considering she tells him to use his life of love on Sandstorm during his leadership ceremony, where the narration implies he feels relieved and like he has permission to love Sandstorm without upsetting Spottedleaf, and he gladly receives her help and visits afterwards during Firestar's quest. It's probably pretty obvious here that I hate Spottedleaf's honest answer. I know why it's there. Vicky adores unrequited love. She must. Characters she focuses on, like Spottedleaf, Ashfur, and Mapleshade, all have this sort of thing in common. She loves messy relationships and drama and killing the kittens of otherwise happy couples, and these things all make for good stories, but Spottedleaf's feelings for Firestar are a retcon. She never shows it in the first arc or implies it, especially not when she's alive. And if she truly was supposed to have feelings for Firestar in the first arc, part of her personality in the first arc is hiding that away and never, ever acting on it. Comforting a clanmate when someone dies, touching your nose to their cheek or their nose when it's an action taken platonically and constantly in Warrior Cats is meaningless for this context, especially when the characters in question have never once in their lives had a personal conversation prior. Additionally, she just says so much here that doesn't add up. Firestar coming to her and telling her he can't be in love with a memory? What? It doesn't line up with his character now or later on at all, especially not when almost all of her appearances going forward are about Firestar. Secondarily, Firepaw is an apprentice all throughout Spottedleaf's life. Making her fall in love with an apprentice-aged Firepaw is an unnecessary change, and without Spottedleaf's honest answer, we wouldn't have any reason to believe that she ever was. Spottedleaf's honest answer is not officially published, no longer officially hosted, and not referenced by the current Warrior Cats website or team anywhere. So why exactly do we as a fandom take it seriously or consider it canon? It was officially hosted once, but it was officially hosted on the same capacity as the Clans Decide, an event in which the readers voted for their favorite leader, and then a short story that doesn't fit into canon was written about the winner, which is official content that is also no longer available anywhere. At the end of The Last Hope, after showing up periodically in Medicine Cat dreams and StarClan scenes, Spottedleaf dies. Double dies. Her ghost gets killed. We never get to see how Firestar would have interacted with her in his own death soon after, as she isn't there for him to interact with. That said, the character doubles down on loving Firestar tenfold right as she dies. Mapleshade is killing Sandstorm in a fit of jealousy over the latter having a happy life, right after she's done monologuing, Spottedleaf jumps in and rips her away. Almost instantly after, Mapleshade slits her ghost's throat. We get this scene as she dies. In the deserted forest, Firestar crouched beside Spottedleaf's trembling body. Blood welled at her neck, soaking Firestar's cheek as he pressed against her.
"Spottedleaf, please don't go," doving her to sob in his mew. "You promised you'd be there to welcome me."
Spottedleaf gave a tiny shake of her head.
"That was never going to happen, my love. I cannot journey with you anymore. I'm so sorry."
Firestar pawed at her.
"No, I still need you."
"Let her go," a she-cat shimmered into view, her gray fur long and matted.
"Yellowfang?"
Firestar looked at her, his green eyes pleading.
"Don't let her disappear, please."
"This was her destiny." Yellowfang touched her muzzle to Firestar's head. "Let her follow it."
"But she said she'd wait for me in StarClan."
Firestar's mew caught in his throat. Spottedleaf looked up at him and opened her mouth as if she wanted to say something. A small gasp escaped her. Then she fell limp. Her fur started to blur, leaving a faint outline, and then nothing but blood-stained grass. Firestar's head drooped. Then Sandstorm waddles over and comforts him. "Bye forever, Spottedleaf. Double dying and fading are both silly as heck concepts. What's even the point of a ghost that only sticks around for like 30 years? What I'm getting at here, anyways, is that at some point after they were done composing the first series, Vicky started writing Spottedleaf as if she was also openly in love with Firestar, even though she really hadn't committed to it or implied it beyond Firestar's own crush on her previously. Future books double and triple down on the idea that Spottedleaf loved Firestar, alongside prequel books making her Redtail's littermate, making her older, but in the original set, it's just not there. It's never even really implied. It's blatant that Firepaw likes her. It's blatant that Firepaw has a huge crush on her, but she doesn't act any differently than any other cat in the clan. You can argue that she was a medicine cat and kept her feelings hidden for that reason, but there's no reason for a dead ghost to keep her feelings hidden. She's a dead ghost. She implies that she's bound to being a medicine cat in death during Arc 3, but we know for a fact that most medicine cats don't feel that way. The authors have talked about Jayfeather and Halfmoon in StarClan not even a few years later, and have implied directly in recent books that Leafpool and Crowfeather are going to get together as ghosts. I'm not really super into Spottedleaf. I don't really like Spottedleaf as a character, but the idea that she's some kind of creepy stalker or weirdo, while that's fine for a comedy video, is fanon. It's not like that in the books. She never acts that way. In fact, she scarcely does more than deliver messages to Fireheart until Series 3's Firestar's Quest. Her fullest conversation in the first series with him post-death is telling him to go love Sandstorm. And while there is published content that says Spottedleaf loves Firestar, and I need to accept that, there isn't any canon content, besides Spottedleaf's honest answer, that ever implies Spottedleaf loved Firepaw. And I don't think it has any reason to be canon. I don't think it has any reason to be relevant. I can't throw away a novella, or a super edition, or a book written 15 years later, but Warrior Cats doesn't even make Spottedleaf's honest answer available officially anywhere, and hasn't published it on any book or any app. All it ever existed as was an advent calendar-ish reward on the same level as a desktop wallpaper to people who completed a reading challenge on a website 15 years ago. So why should I consider it canon content? Why should anyone? Moonkitty's honest answer is they shouldn't. Firestar has always been in love with Spottedleaf. He doesn't ever seem to stop being in love with Spottedleaf. In fact, the only person who decidedly says that Spottedleaf isn't a problem is Spottedleaf. And there's plenty of implication that had Spottedleaf lived, Firestar would have been, dating a ghost in heaven or whatever. Like how Barry Nose definitely is right now. But during the first arc of books, there's nothing implying that Spottedleaf is even romantically interested. Her actions towards Firestar could be interpreted as motherly. As a ghost, I mean. Not as a living medicine cat where she just kind of seems insecure in her one personal conversation she ever has with Firepaw. And this isn't about shipping. I simply do not and cannot bring myself to care about a 20-year-old ship war in Warrior Cats. Like, I couldn't feasibly bring myself to actually be interested. But my point is this. There is incredibly little evidence for Spottedleaf ever actually being in love with Fireheart in the first arc. There is retconned in evidence from later books that we do have to take seriously that say, yes, she was in love with Fireheart. But I don't think that there is anything about any of this that implies that she was ever in love with Firepaw in life. All we have is a 3-page document that I do not think we should be considering canon. It doesn't line up with the first arc. It doesn't line up with the later arcs. It's random, it's offhand, and it doesn't fit in anywhere.